Hello, I'm Ben and you're watching a PhD Parent. And many people have heard of studies called randomized controlled trials or RCTs. This type of study is widely considered one of the most powerful ways to determine whether an intervention is effective in treating a specified condition. In the following, I'll try to illustrate why RCTs are the favourite approach for testing the effectiveness of an intervention, and relatedly, why I focus on RCTs when reviewing research on the website. So, suppose you have developed a new intervention for the common cold, some fancy new pill, and you want to determine whether it's effective in treating this illness. And to do so, let's say you start with a single group design. So in this design, you recruit a bunch of people diagnosed with the common cold, you assess their symptoms, and then ask them to take your new pill for 7 days. At the end of these 7 days, you assess their symptoms again. So as shown in the graph, at this second assessment point, you find that people report significantly reduced levels of cold symptoms relative to the first assessment point. So on the basis of this, can you claim that your intervention is effective in treating the common cold? While the results are consistent with this possibility, the problem is that people's symptoms may naturally just get better over time, which is obviously true of the common cold. And if this happened, then it would look like the pill was effective, but in fact it did nothing. Now there are other problems, but I won't go into them now. So no, you can't claim your intervention was effective using this study design. Consequently, you move on to option number 2, a randomized trial with no treatment or waitlist control condition. In this design, again, you recruit a bunch of people diagnosed with the common cold and assess their symptoms. But this time, at random, half are assigned to take your new pill for 7 days, and the other half receive no treatment. All get put on a waitlist, doesn't really matter for this example. At the end of these 7 days, you assess everyone's symptoms again. As shown in the graph, at this second assessment point, you find that people who were given the pill report fewer cold symptoms than those who did not receive treatment. Now can you claim that your intervention is effective in treating the common cold? Well, you might be able to claim that giving your pill is better than doing nothing. However, as I'll briefly expand upon, you wouldn't be able to make claims about what produced the differential improvement, and you may have concerns about whether this improvement actually is genuine. First, what produced the differential improvement, assuming it was genuine? So this improvement may be because of the supposedly active ingredient in the pill, but it may instead be because you gave people something that was supposed to make them feel better. That is, what's driving the differential improvement is the placebo effect. Second, is the improvement genuine? Possibly, but many people who receive the pill report they're feeling much better due to the belief that this is what's expected of them. That is, a demand effect. Or maybe the folks who carry out the symptom assessments are unwittingly more lenient in their judgments about the severity of people's symptoms who receive the pill, due to their belief that it was supposed to help. That is, you got an assessment bias. So, given these issues, while you're getting close to being able to claim your pill is effective, you're not quite there. So now you move on to option number 3, a double-blind randomized trial with placebo control condition. So once more, you recruit a bunch of people diagnosed with the common cold and you assess their symptoms. In this design, at random, half are assigned to take your new pill for 7 days and the other half receive a sugar pill which serves as your placebo control. At the end of these 7 days, you assess everyone's symptoms again. During completion of the study, neither participants nor researchers are aware of which condition participants have been assigned to. This is what is meant by double-blind. Again, as shown in the graph below, at this second assessment point, you find that people who were given your new pill report fewer cold symptoms than those who received the placebo sugar pill. In this case, can you claim that your intervention is effective in treating the common cold? Now you're getting somewhere. So this design eliminates the possibility that the differential improvement reflects a placebo effect. Because if it was a placebo effect, then the two groups would look the same in terms of improvement. It eliminates a demand effect explanation because participants don't know what condition they're in, so any demand effect would be equally evident across both groups. And lastly, it also eliminates an assessment bias explanation because researchers don't know which condition participants were in, so any assessment bias would be equally evident across both groups. Thus, with this approach, you're on strong grounds to claim that your intervention was effective. Now, a couple of things to finish up with. First of all, the importance of randomization. I didn't mention this earlier, but in short, randomization to condition is important as this enables you to eliminate the presence of any systematic differences between your conditions. I'll illustrate with an extreme example. Suppose inadvertently your active pill condition ended up comprising only women and your placebo pill condition comprising only men. What this would mean is that there would be a sex confound between your two conditions, and so any differential improvement could be attributed to this difference rather than the treatment. In principle, randomization will get rid of such confounds. And now I'm just going to touch on the trouble with determining the effectiveness of psychological and/or behavioral interventions. So to make things simple, the examples above involved an intervention that was a pill. However, the interventions I look at in the PhD parent are almost always psychological or behavioral interventions. So in the following, I'll briefly discuss how the types of issues just described play out in the context of research investigating the effectiveness of psychological and behavioral interventions. The first issue is whether you can rule out natural improvement over time when investigating the effectiveness of psychological and behavioral interventions. Not a problem, just compare the intervention to a no treatment or a waitlist control condition. The second issue is whether you can rule out placebo effects. This one can be tough. The reason for this is that it's very challenging, if not impossible, to develop a rigorous placebo condition for psychological and behavioral interventions. For example, there really isn't a therapy equivalent of a sugar pill. Third issue is whether you can rule out demand effects. It can be hard to eliminate demand effects by trying to blind participants to condition. That is, people usually know, for example, that they're getting therapy, and so they'll know which condition they're in. So what you'll often see instead is that researchers will use objective approaches for assessing outcomes. For example, if you're testing the effectiveness of a sleep intervention, you might use an objective sleep measure such as actigraphy. The idea is that these objective measures will, in theory, be less susceptible to demand effects than subjective self-report assessments. Final issue is whether you can rule out assessment bias. This can be dealt with in a straightforward manner by having assessors who are not aware of which condition a participant has been assigned to. These assessors might be other researchers, clinicians, or in the case of kids, you might get reports from teachers. So in my view, you can't quite get the same experimental rigor when testing the effectiveness of many psychological behavioral interventions as you can with other types of interventions such as a pill. Now this doesn't invalidate the results you get from studies of psychological behavioral interventions. It just means you need to be aware of their shortcomings and make judgments in light of these. So that's it for RCTs. If there's anything I've gotten wrong or if you have any questions, then feel free to get in touch. Otherwise, happy parenting.